Ionavation. We out in New Rochelle, Ionavation. Moving with Intel, Ionavation. Now we in the groove.
Hello, Ionavators. Welcome back to Ionavation Podcast. I'm Riana.
And I'm Gerry.
And today we have a very special guest with us, Rob Kissner.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me on, Riana
Yeah,
and Gerry.
welcome,
Nice to see you.
So Rob is the newest designer in residence at the Hynes Institute, so we're super excited about his new role. Just to start it off, Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit about your new role?
So I'm the first and current designer in residence at Hynes, which is super exciting because it's sort of setting the path for a whole bunch of new things that are going to be happening at the Hynes Institute. And my role has several sort of sections to it. One is, and one that I'm super excited for, is I'm going to be participating with the Hynes team in building out the Makerspace at the Hynes Institute. So it's going to encourage students that are enrolled in classes at the Hynes Institute and in any other classes at Iona to come to the space at the Hynes Institute, use our 3D printers and other making materials to prototype projects, which is going to be super exciting. So that's one part of it. And the second part relates to that, which is supporting students both in Hynes and anywhere at Iona with different projects they're working on. So that might be 3D printing prototypes. It might be helping students put together mock-ups of apps. It might be helping students mock up websites. Or it might be simply just like having them come in and we're playing with Legos and Play-Doh as sort of an ideation session to get an idea of what their prototypes might look like. And the third part, which I'm also super excited about, is to collaborate with other professors at Iona, both in and out of the Hynes Institute, in bringing design thinking, making, and prototyping to their students. And as a matter of fact, just a few days ago, I attended a graduate occupational therapy class, and we did a 3-hour brainstorming and prototyping session in which we built out a lo-fi prototype of looking at occupational therapy as a service rather than just going in and working with the kids in a classroom. And I think it was one, really fun, but two, it was also eye-opening for the occupational therapy students. You don't normally bring sort of these entrepreneurial things into the classroom. But I think it was an eye-opening experience, and it had them look at occupational therapy in a totally new perspective, which was really cool to experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Makerspace event, so we kind of had like a preview of it with CEO Club, so that was definitely fun to be a part of. Can you tell us your favorite part of the Makerspace?
My favorite part of the Makerspace, I'm kind of torn because I love like cool gadgets and technology. So obviously like 3D printing is really exciting. And I like using the software and different tools to create like more high fidelity prototypes. But I also really like working with sort of just like nondescript building materials like Play-Doh and wire and beads, and like having to take these sort of like basic things and turn them into something functional. And that was one thing that was really cool about the Maker event is, you know, we just handed these little kits to students that just had a bunch of stuff in them. And there was a design prompt in the bag, but I found that like very few students actually followed the design prompt, and they just sort of like got a lay of the land in terms of the materials that we included, which were like construction paper, balloons, zip ties, beads, wire, like really basic stuff. And they just kind of hit the ground running with creating things. And what was really cool is I would say close to half of the students that participated all ended up making some kind of really cool like fidget toy inspired jewelry. So it might have been like a ring with a couple of loose beads on it that moved around, or like a bracelet with something on it that you could fidget with. So it was really cool to see the different ways that the students interpreted both the design prompt and the materials that we had. And I don't know, it's just really exciting to see like actual things get made and not just like a wad of Play-Doh with a bunch of like zip ties wrapped around it, you know?
I thought I like my favorite part of it was that everyone, whatever they came up with, it was all different, right? Like no one had like the exact same thing. Like it was really unique to them. So that part was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of making and tinkering and hacking in general, is like in and out of class, when we're working on these kinds of things, like you're not getting graded on like how perfect the prototype is. That's not what it's about. It's about taking your ideas and experimenting with the tools and materials that you have to actualize it in some way, to turn it into something that you can hold in your hand. And it doesn't matter if it's awful, if it comes out terrible, or it comes out different than you expected, because the act of making it helps you think through and see the object or product or service or whatever it is you're making in a totally new light versus just having it in your head as an idea. And that's really what it's all about. And that was really cool about the Maker event, is everybody had like some idea in their head, and the way that it turned into a physical object was very personal and very different based on whatever they had in mind. So it was really cool to experience that.
Yeah, I thought it was cool too. I was sitting at the same table with two other kids, and we were all given the same exact items, and we created 3 like drastically different fidget toys. And then like after that, we moved on, like we started like fiddling around with the balloons and the tape and things like that. So like just like everybody getting the same thing, but nobody turning out with the same product was like definitely like the coolest thing. It's like weird how we all take the same thing. Like we could all have the same start, and we could just take it in like different directions.
Yeah, that's kind of that's kind of what it's all about, right? Again, it's like this personal interpretation, and it's funny, both at the event and just in general, when you see maker spaces or people that are given a set of materials, it's like they look at the materials and they're like, I don't really know what to do, right? And it's like, when we think about what we're doing at the Hynes Institute and developing businesses and developing business plans, it's very hard to get started, right? It's like very overwhelming, and it's like you may have an idea and you don't know where to start. And I think the idea of making and hacking and tinkering and this idea of being playful is really important, because when there is no sort of desired outcome, or there is no, I don't want to say no goal, but when there's no sort of trajectory or perfectly laid out plan. In other words, when you have like a big pile of Legos and Play-Doh in front of you, you'll just start grabbing stuff and putting it together. Like starting isn't hard when you're approaching something in such a playful way. Whereas when you're like, oh, I have to like put a business plan together, it's like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to get started. And so to apply this maker mentality where you just jump in, and it's probably going to be horrible in the first iteration, but you refine it. And just the fact of getting started makes it that much more manageable and easier. I feel like this designer in residence role in the makerspace is going to start to really intertwine that mindset with the academic part of the Hynes Institute. And so, it will set the culture and the mindset where we're just going to get started, and it's not going to be right. And we're going to keep playing around with it and making it and refining it until it's in a point where it needs to be.
So you're an adjunct professor and a designer residence at Hynes, but outside of Hynes, what other ventures and different things do you pursue outside of this?
I think the easiest way to describe it is I'm a kid that never grew up, because my business deals with teaching kids creative technology and making things. So basically, my business is the Digital Arts Experience. We've been in business almost 10 years, and we provide enrichment programs for kids in technology. So we're making video games, we're 3D printing stuff, we have a laser cutter, we're doing animations, and basically we get to, hang out and teach kids how to be creative with the stuff that we have, which is super, super fun. So, this designer in residence role is really fun because it aligns very well with what I do in my business as well.
And do you have like an influential entrepreneurial experience that like kind of like either like changed the way you see things or the way you do things? Like,
yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I had never in a million years ever thought I'd start my own business or be a business owner. It's not something I wanted to do. It's not something I had any interest in doing. And it's a bit of a long story, but to keep it short, my previous professional life was in music. I was an audio engineer and I managed a recording studio. And I, for like my entire life, was always into music and music technology, and, went to school for it. I studied media production with a focus on audio and radio, and interned at a bunch of pro studios in the city. And then I started managing the studio. And long story short, I did that for a couple of years, and one, just got burnt out on the hours, and two, it was a really bad time to be in the music business. It was the summer of 2008 during the economic downturn. So, I went from being in college and being able to like create music and be audio engineering on my terms to like having to take anybody who had the money to walk through the door and pay for the studio time, no matter how good or bad they were as a musician. So I sort of like fell out of love with audio engineering as a profession and sort of wanted to do that on the side. And I really didn't have any direction. I had no idea. I like got a job at the Apple store so I could get health insurance and get a paycheck to pay my bills and stuff. And, in our classes at Hynes, we talk about developing an observational mindset, which is about recognizing opportunities or potential opportunities. And my pivotal moment is not so much about like an inspiring entrepreneur, but it's this observational mindset. My friend and I that I grew up with were hanging out one night, and we were just like talking about being in high school and like playing in heavy metal bands and skateboarding and stuff and like all that. And then we got more into like our sort of desired pathways that we wanted to follow when we were that age. So I wanted to be in the music industry, and in, the late 90s and early 2000s, there was no garage band or anything like that. Like to be able to have a recording setup at a school would have taken tens of thousands of dollars to build out. So like no school had any place where someone that was interested in music technology to actually use it. And my friend Mike, who I grew up with, is a visual artist, and he was interested in not just drawing and painting, but like welding and vacuum forming and working with resins, which you just like can't do in school because there's like health issues associated with that. And it's like thinking to myself, well, why is there not a program for kids to be able to have access to the stuff that they want to explore on their terms? I was like, well, why don't we make it, right? So my friend and I sort of fleshed the idea out in the beginning. He didn't end up actually pursuing it because I went with a focal point on technology and he was more in traditional arts. But that was the idea. It's like I saw an opportunity in that kids at a young age don't have the ability to just like go into a space with a bunch of really cool technology and play with stuff and make stuff and just have fun and learn about what it's really like in those industries. And so that's how I became an entrepreneur, I guess.
Wow, that's awesome. You mentioned a bit about like the classroom experience. Can you let us know like some of like the classes that you teach at the Hynes Institute?
Absolutely. So I started at the Hynes Institute teaching the Intro to Ideation and Design Thinking class, which is my favorite. That really focuses on the observational mindset and learning to recognize opportunities, and gets really deep into empathy and understanding people to develop great solutions, rather than thinking about like, how can I make money and how can I take advantage of someone's need to make money? It's a very human focused thing. And I think it's really important to developing ethical and sustainable businesses. I teach the ENT 200 class, which is the intro to entrepreneurship, which is really fun. It's like, for many students, it's the first time they've ever experienced anything relating to entrepreneurship. And it's very high level about mindset and practice. And we put together sort of a very high level business model for ideas that the students generate. And then I'm teaching a new class in June for the summer semester that I'm super excited about. And it's all about hacking, making, and tinkering. Literally, we're just going to spend time in the Makerspace working with tons of different mediums, from Play-Doh and Legos and zip ties and string to prototyping apps to 3D printing and everything in between. It's going to be heavily design focused, not so much like graphic design, but more, I'm going to give you a prompt and you have to design a solution and make it. So it's got this design thinking thing built into it, but I'm super excited. I think it's going to be really fun. So if you're interested, definitely sign up for that class, because there's still space left.
Cool. And lastly, what can students come to the Hynes Institute to see you do on a daily basis, and why should students get involved at Hynes in general?
Well, first of all, I'm going to answer the second part of that first. Whether you take a class at Hynes or you attend workshops at Hynes or you just come into Hynes and hang out, the Hynes Institute, that space is like my favorite space to be ever. Like, I love being at my business. I love being at home, but my favorite place to be is the Hynes Institute. One, because the space is amazing. It's super flexible. It's super modern. It has the feel of like a modern co-working space. And it's awesome. Everything is modular and on wheels. We can move it around. Two, the team at Hynes is amazing. Super creative people, super positive people. There's just like an amazing, creative, positive energy in there. And three, there's always something exciting happening there. Obviously, during COVID, it's been a little bit quieter, but even with just a handful of people, somebody's doing something awesome there at any time when you walk in, whether it's related to promoting a workshop at Hynes or working with students on creative ideas. There's always something fun happening. So that's why you should come, or that's what goes on there. That's the second part of the question. I'm on campus for now every Monday and Wednesday. I'm sometimes there on Tuesdays. And, my thing as when I'm not teaching classes as the designer in residence, I'm there for anybody that wants to either make something, talk about making something, brainstorm something. If you want to just share ideas, if you want to just talk about video games, to just start the creative energy or whatever it is, my goal is to support students in any sort of creative endeavor, whether that's prototyping something or simply, I've got this idea for a animated comic book and I don't know how to make it a reality. So whether it's related to class or not, that's my role, is to support you in being creative and making things.
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you for coming on. This was an awesome episode. Very interesting. For those, make sure you follow us on our Hynes Institute Instagram at Hynes Institute to see all the upcoming events and workshops that we have going on, as well as clips from this podcast and all the other podcasts we have that on Instagram. And make sure to subscribe on YouTube as well to check out all of our e-talks, workshops, podcasts. Every event that's gone on this year is uploaded on our YouTube. So including some that Rob has been a part of. So if you want to hear more from him, you can check him out there. So before we go, Rob, do you have anything you want to plug, any social medias or anything like that?
If you're interested in learning about my business, thedae.com, as in digital arts experience. But honestly, more importantly than that, just come and pay a visit. I'm come and see the space. I'll teach you how to 3D print something. Let's hang out and talk about cool stuff. Come and visit Hynes. I can't stress enough, it's a great space, and you don't need to be in an entrepreneurship class to take advantage of it. So come and hang out for sure.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be signing off. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. So bye.
Bye, everyone.
We really working, Gale Ventures the spot. Bert and May got the podcast hot. We innovating, no debating, we creating. Ionavators in our lane, never hating. We just worry about us and what we do. Ionavation Podcast show, get in tune.